Hey, hope you're well. My name is Jimmy Fung. Welcome to the channel. In this video, I break down exactly everything that you need to know in terms of how to book meetings and generate leads using cold emails. So to give you more background context, I'm the founder of salesway.io. It is a lead generation agency. Pretty much I work with different B2B companies, helping them book qualified sales calls every single month. I mainly do this using cold emails. So in this video, I break down exactly everything that you need to know to do that, right? I peel back the curtains and I show you what I know, everything that I know, right? So all of this is free. I wish when I was first getting started in my own business, I wish I had a resource like this that taught me how to book meetings using cold emails. There's a ton of YouTube videos out there, but unfortunately, it still took me a long time, right? I had to buy a bunch of courses. I had to talk with a lot of people. I had to do a lot of Google searches. And most importantly, I spent a lot of time and money testing different things myself, right? Opportunity cost is a really real thing. So my goal with this video is so that you could use it as a centralized resource. You don't have to go through the same struggles I did when I was first starting my own business. And you will have everything that you need to know in a basically in a 1 hour video. If you like this video, make sure you subscribe, make sure you like it. And if you want more videos related to lead generation agencies, how to go about building one yourself, how to generate leads, how to book meetings, stuff like that, make sure you check out and follow my Instagram page where I go in much more detail. But hope you like this video and grab your popcorn, grab your coffee, and this is a video full of value. Enjoy. This video is the ultimate guide to booking sales calls using cold emails. This video is everything that you need to know, and I use these exact same strategies to book 20 plus sales calls every single week across a bunch of different niches, across a bunch of different industries for myself and my clients from my own agency called salesway.io. So this video is everything that you need to know. It's the step-by-step walkthrough, and I peel back the curtains and I show you exactly what you need to book meetings starting today. So jumping right into it, what we will be covering in today's video is a couple of things, right? The first one is in terms of the cold email strategy, it really consists of 5 main factors. The first one is the front-end email sending infrastructure. The second point is the deliverability, so making sure your emails get delivered. The third one is list building and finding the contacts that you'll be reaching out to. After you have that, the fourth thing is the script writing, and then finally the inbox management. So that's pretty much what we will be going over today. So in terms of the front-end email sending infrastructure, the most important thing and the thing that it took me a while to understand is the idea that volume negates luck. And this is by far the most neglected and simple part of outbound that is pretty much neglected by 99% of people pretty much all of the time. And the theory and logic behind it is if you send more emails, then obviously you book more calls. It's basic math, right? So the question is, how many emails can you send? And the answer to that question is you should be sending as many emails as humanly possible, but within reason, of course, right? So obviously there's a bunch of different factors. For example, you can't be sending, let's say, 1 million emails, but if all 1 million of them goes into the inbox, then it doesn't really matter that you're sending 1 million. Or if your target market only has 20,000 companies, then obviously you can't be sending 1 million either, right? Because there's just not that many companies to reach out to, right? So obviously we have to do it within reason. So for our own agency at salesway.io, this is what our front end volume setup looks like for our own business. So what we do is we set up 17 domains using Porkbun. Of those 17 domains, we set up 50 Outlook 365 business basic email accounts. And across those 50 email accounts, we send 1,500 emails per day. So every single month, every 30 days, we send 45,000 emails per month. So again, volume negates luck. And the idea behind this, if you really think about it, is it's damn near impossible to not book meetings while sending 45,000 personalized emails directed towards our ICP every single month, right? With high enough volume, we give ourselves more chances to hit our dream clients, our dream prospects at the right time with our offer. In a way, we're really just manufacturing our own luck, because part of cold emails, part of cold outreach is we're reaching out to people. And if what we sell is of value, provides a service, if timing is something that works for them, so timing is kind of the luck thing, luck aspect of cold outreach, then people will book meetings, right? And by sending enough volume, we are really manufacturing that luck, because we're finding as many people as possible where the timing is right. So the actual tech used in our front end email setup, it goes like this, right? So obviously for domains, right now we use Porkbun domains, although in the past I have used Google domains. As of today, November 2023, Google actually sold the Google domains aspect of the business to Squarespace, so it's called Squarespace domains. We have not actually used Squarespace domains yet for ourselves or for our clients. We just use Porkbun domains. With those Porkbun domains, we then set up Outlook 365 email accounts. A couple months ago, when I was using Google domains, I actually set up Google Workspace accounts, so basically the paid business version of Gmail, and that worked really well. But because of the Squarespace stuff and the uncertainty behind it, we moved over to Outlook 365 running Porkbun domains. Although a lot of my friends, a lot of my colleagues who do lead gen agencies, they are still on Squarespace domains and they're getting pretty good results as well, right? So I think that is more of a preference thing. The third point is we use smartly.ai for our email warm-up and our automated sending tool. Pretty much it allows us to send thousands of emails every single day, because in the very beginning when I first started my business, so a quick little backstory actually, and I'm sure that, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I'm sure you like it. So before I actually built my lead generation agency, I actually built an email marketing agency for e-commerce brands. And back then, I didn't really know too much about, sending emails using the automated tools, stuff like that. So I actually manually sent emails. I hired a virtual assistant from Nepal, and I was paying him a couple bucks an hour. And every single day he was sending out, I think it was 50 or 60 emails every single day. And it took a while to get meetings, but we were still consistently booking between 2 to 3 meetings while sending 50 to 60 emails every single day, right? And that was manual, right? So obviously, sending automated emails is the way to go, because 1,500 is a lot more than 50. And again, volume negates luck, right? But pretty much these service providers have, all three of these service providers have proven to be the best in terms of deliverability, which we will cover now. So the next one is email deliverability, right? So email deliverability completely dictates whether our cold emails will land in the prospect's inbox or whether it will land in the inbox's spam folder, right? So you know how if you go over into Gmail, there's a section that says spam emails. If you go into Outlook, there's a section that says junk emails. So if our emails are landing in the spam, they will go in those folders, and pretty much people don't check those folders as much. I know I check them maybe like once a month. And if they are in that, in that spam folder, even though people are reading the message, you just lose a lot of credibility, right? So that's why deliverability is such a huge focus. It's why it is absolutely crucial to have good deliverability, or else your cold email campaigns will be completely ruined because of spam. So deliverability is another very often overlooked aspect of cold emails, as not too many people know about it, and it's not very often spoken about. So email providers, so the idea behind it is email providers, they actually don't want people to be sending mass cold email campaigns from their infrastructures. So when Google Workspace was still part of Google and Gmail, they, obviously they want Gmail to be used for purposes of just people checking their emails, getting newsletters, stuff like that. They don't necessarily want it to be used for marketing and sales purposes. So what they have done is Google, and this applies to Microsoft and Outlook as well, is they actually created certain softwares and algorithms to really detect and neutralize marketing and sales emails. So the idea is in order to combat this, is we have to use good sending practices to avoid landing in the spam folders, right? So each email account has something called a reputation. With each other email providers, pretty much they are given a score, so that when they actually send emails, based on that score, it shows the algorithm how legitimate that email is. So to build a good email reputation, when creating a brand new email account, we use a technique called email warming for the email accounts. Pretty much when we are setting up these email accounts, they are completely brand new, right? And when they're brand new, what we need to do is we need to warm up these email accounts for 14 days with software like smartly.ai and not send any actual cold emails during that time. So once that warm up period is over, we can then start gradually sending cold emails while still running the warm up. So the way it works for our business is I've tested this extensively with a bunch of different numbers. So sending more emails, sending less emails, spreading them out across more accounts. And what I realized to be the most effective combination in terms of ramping a period is these are the numbers, right? So the reason we want to ramp up the cold emails after we set up brand new email accounts is because we don't want a drastic difference. So basically when we're setting up a brand new cold email account, right? Obviously it's at zero, right? It's never sent a single email. It has not received a single email, and you don't want to jump straight to 30 emails the next day because that is a massive red flag in the email sending algorithm and is considered and classified as abnormal email sending behavior, right? And it's a straight way to end up in the spam filters, right? So in terms of the ramp ups, this is what the numbers we have tested. This is what we have found, right? In the first week, we like to send 5 to 10 cold emails accounts, right? So the first week we go from 5 to 10. Week 2, we go from 15 to 20 cold emails per account. And in week 3, then we're at 25 to 30 cold emails account. And the way it works is we want to cap out at 30 to 35 cold emails per day, as any more emails risk landing in spam. So a couple months ago, when I was still using Google Workspace accounts, I actually tested a setup where I set up one email domain, one email account for that one domain, and I sent out 50 email accounts, and it worked pretty well for the first, I want to say 60 or 90-ish days. And after that period, around the 3-month mark, I started getting a bunch of problems, right? My account started getting locked. People began replying back to me, telling me that they found my emails in the spam filters. So stuff like that. And then once we started converting to this sending infrastructure, that became less apparent, right? A lot of our emails, they stopped getting as many errors, and we don't really get people telling us that our stuff is landing in spam, right? So it's kind of a good news, right? So alongside sending 30 to 35 cold emails per day, we also want to be making sure that we're still sending out warming emails on a day-to-day basis. But the way it works is we don't want to be sending more than 20 warm-up emails at this volume either. And finally, another crucial part of email deliverability is something called bounce rate. So bounce rate is essentially the percentage of emails that you send that don't land or they bounce from a prospect's inbox, right? So the higher the bounce rate, the worse your email reputation becomes, right? And emails bounce when you send emails to email accounts that are unavailable. So for example, if I set up john.smith at google.com, and then the next day, John.Smith got laid off by Google, then obviously his email account will no longer exist. And if you send to John.Smith at google.com, now your email will bounce, right? So that's one of the reasons, right? And you want to keep your bounce rate below 3% for good deliverability, right? Because over time, the more emails that bounce, the more damage your email reputation and your email deliverability will end up taking, right? So another side note that I want to make is for myself, I talk with a lot of different business founders, business owners every single day when I pitch my own lead gen agency services. And when the ones that do start, who are using cold emails for their own outreach purposes, a lot of them use the actual main website domain, right? So for example, my main website for my lead gen agency is salesway.io. My main email is jimmy@salesway.io. So I don't want to be using that specific email to be sending out cold emails. I want to create a bunch of different alternative domains. It might say something like trysalesway.com or get leads at salesway.com, something like that. And we'll be using those kind of beater domains so that we're sending cold emails. And another advantage to that is if they end up getting burned down the line, they end up getting blacklisted, because when we're sending these marketing and sales emails, that's definitely something to consider, right? Eventually they might end up actually getting blacklisted, but because we're creating alternative domains, it's not that bad, right? Well, if they get blacklisted, we will just buy a brand new domain. We set up 2 to 3 email accounts for each of those domains that get burned, ramp them up for 2 to 3 weeks, and we'll be good to go, right? But if your main domains gets burned, you're pretty much screwed, right? Like, you're done. Because if that domain ever gets blacklisted, you're pretty much fucked. Also, when creating secondary domains, some rules that you should be following for best deliverability is these 6 rules, right? So for example, the first one is only use .com domains. So don't use .net, .org, .ca. I'm in Canada, don't use .ca. Don't use any other things like that. Second rule is don't use numbers. So don't put agency123.com, just do agency.com. Third rule is don't use dashes. So pretty self-explanatory. And some examples of some strong secondary domains for agency.com would be goagency.com or agencynow.com or weareagency.com. So what I strongly advise is take the time to buy proper domains and don't be cheap. So this was kind of something that I kind of fucked up on in my own business. Is a couple months ago, I actually used an alternative email provider called Zoho. It was a lot cheaper than both Google Workspace and Outlook 365, and that's the main reason I switched. And it worked for a while until 3 or 4 months ago, there was something called a purge, which happens pretty routinely in the cold email space, and pretty much Google and Outlook, they just pretty much started blocking all the Zoho email accounts because I guess the majority of Zoho users were using it for spamming people and stuff like that. So Outlook and Gmail, their filters started blocking any emails that came from Zoho of any sort, whether it's legit or unlegit, and pretty much all of those accounts got wasted. And I think I lost somewhere between $3,000 or $4,000 on that. So my lesson is, and what I advise for you is take the time to buy proper domains and don't be cheap. And then the final crucial sending practice for good deliverability that you must follow is something called a spin tax, right? So pretty much a spin tax is a text alternator that switches up certain words, certain phrases within an email to make sure that the emails that we're sending are not completely the same and they're somewhat unique, right? So why is spin tax important? So we want to use spin tax because spam filters will end up marking emails as spam if it notices the exact same email being sent thousands of times. So when you're sending 1,000 emails, 2,000 emails, 3,000 cold emails, it's very important to be unique. And by having some unique phrases in them, it's a lot harder for those algorithms to detect that these emails would be automated, right? So example, a spin tax, you can pause the video, you can screenshot it, you can look at it. But you see, even in this first phrase over here, I wrote, hey, hi, hello, good day. I could have just wrote, hey, John, or hi, John. But instead, we're spin taxing with 4 alternatives. So email 1 might say, hey, John. Email 2 might say, hi, John. Third email is hello, John, so on and so forth. So make sure that you are using spin tax throughout your entire email sequence. And this is what you would do, right? And one tiny golden nugget that I want to give you is one thing I started doing is a great opportunity for spin tax and keeping your emails different is in the phrase, start using some quotes, right? So for example, I never used to do this. And I struggled a little bit thinking about some ideas for spin taxes, but having quotes, these business quotes or motivation quotes, stuff like that, some people might think it's a little cheesy. So if you think so, you don't have to use it. But for myself, I started using all of these quotes because I could literally put an infinite amount of these motivational quotes. Just go on Google and search up motivational quotes. You see a million of them. And that way, your email will be a lot more unique than the previous one, right? So that's a little golden nugget that I'll give to you, but obviously you could take that information and do what you want with it. So as a recap of this section of email deliverability, here's a quick rundown for the best email sending practices. The first one is the warm-up email accounts. You must warm them up for 14 days. Second one is ramp up those email accounts after warming up. So don't just go straight to sending 35 emails right away. Third one is keep low bounce rates. Do this by verifying emails, stuff like that. The fourth one is only use .com domains. Secondary domains, again, don't use your primary email domain, your main website, stuff like that. And the fifth one is always use spin tax. And if you execute each of these 5 practices, you will increase your chance for deliverability and you will really minimize that possibility of you ending up in spam. So jumping right into the list building section is the first thing you need to understand is that lead lists are the fuel of your email campaigns. So shitty fuel equals to shitty mileage, right? In the same way that shitty lead list equals shitty campaign results. So your list not only determine your target market and the target market that you're reaching out to, but how you write your email copy as well. So let me explain. So let's say you build a lead list by targeting e-commerce brands. A bunch of people do that. If your clients are running ads, they run an ads agency for e-commerce brands, then this is pretty relevant. So let's say if you were to personalize that email according to this list, you might write something like this. Notice that you run an e-commerce brand. But think about it like this. That line, notice you run an e-commerce brand, that's not very personalized, right? There are tens of millions of e-commerce brands out there that, you really could have sent this to anyone, or at least this is what they perceive it, right? They think that you could have sent it to $10 million brands, the exact same line, right? So how can we write a more personalized email copy, right? And the answer is by building segmented lists. So instead of just targeting e-commerce brands, we could target beauty brands with TikTok Pixel. So you see how this is way more specific. And I'm not talking about niching down. I'm talking about being specific with the way we build our lead list. There's a difference. So by doing this, we can write a much more personalized copy around this segment list. So example is we could say in our email copy now is we could say, hey, came across a brand on TikTok while searching for beauty products. So you see how this line is a lot more tailored to the prospect, since you really can't just send this to any e-commerce brand owner. So how do we actually create these segmented lists? I created a couple of different phases that you could follow towards building these lead lists. So in phase one, it's finding your ICP companies. So first, we need to actually find the companies that we want to target that fit your ICP. ICP stands for Ideal Customer Profile. There are plenty of different databases you can use to find companies that you want to target. Here are just a few. So clutch.co is one of them. I actually put together a YouTube video that details exactly how we build this lead list using LinkedIn. And in part of that video, I show you how you would scrape clutch.co and different online directories to build these companies that you want to target. So there's clutch.co, there's brand nav and store leads. That's more so looking for Shopify brands or e-commerce. There used to be a strategy where you use D7 leads finder, but brand nav and store leads is much more effective. The third one is to use seamless.ai. That's more so for SaaS companies, software companies. Same as crunchbase.com is really good for SaaS companies as well. And then SalesNav is really effective as well. It's kind of like Apollo. It takes the information from LinkedIn, so the largest social media network for business owners and professionals. So that's very effective. So in this example, we'll be using BrandNav to target women's apparel e-commerce brands. So the first thing we'll do is we will start with filtering companies first. So what you want to do is you want to go to your chosen database and take a look at the filters. So there are typically four main filters that every single database has. The first one is database and department industry. Second one is employee count. Third one is technology, and the fourth one is location. So here are the settings you should use for each of these when you're doing your company search. So here's a quick little screen grab as what department and industry example could kind of look like. So the first one is you would just niche down the department industry that you want to target for your campaign. So we're targeting apparel brands, and you could click specifically women's apparels. And again, this is using BrandNav. This is the directory that we are using in this example. The next one is the employee count. So depending on the size of the company that you want to target, you can add employee count accordingly. So if you care about the average monthly revenue, this is kind of the rule of thumb I go with. And if you want to filter companies by how much money they make, I strongly suggest you do so by filtering employee headcount, because obviously a company that has 100 employees, they're probably making millions of dollars in revenue versus a company that might only have 5 employees. So the general rule of thumb I go by is companies that are between 1 to 10 employees, they're pretty broke. They're probably somewhere between $0 a month to $30,000 per month. Companies with 11 to 20 employees is somewhere between $30,000 per month to $100,000 per month. 21 to 50 employees is probably somewhere between $100,000 per month to $1 million per month. And 51 plus employees is very likely around $1 million per month. And I almost never include 1 to 10 employees, as the companies in that range are usually very unqualified a lot of the time. So example on BrandNav, and the reason I say they're unqualified is because they're just usually companies that don't have a lot of money. So if let's say you are pitching your services, you might have some trouble charging $5,000, $10,000 for them because they're only making $15,000 a month, right? Or even if you were able to sign them, they might typically be not so good not so good clients, because they're just very stingy with their money. They might be micromanagers, stuff like that. So using brand nav, the example of the filter is this employee headcount, right? We see 10 is the minimum all the way up to infinity and set max value at infinity. So this is brand nav. The next one is technologies used. So here you can choose relevant technologies depending on your offer. And you could use this to find prospects that are aware or looking into implementing specific services into your business. So for example, before the lead generation agencies that I currently run, I ran an email marketing agency pretty much for e-commerce brands. We worked with Klaviyo, building out email flows, the email newsletters, stuff like that. So a way we could target those companies is by targeting companies that are using Klaviyo as existing technology. The next one is the location. So what you can do is really effective actually is you can target companies in very specific locations. So if you only want to target English speaking countries, then you could target countries like Canada, United States, UK, Australia, New Zealand. One of the things that a mistake I made earlier this year was when I was targeting software development agencies, I just picked a bunch of companies. I didn't filter by location. And what actually happened was I got a lot of people jumping on the calls from countries that don't really speak English. And if they do, the English is not a main factor, main language. And it was just really challenging to sell them. So an example on BrandNav is by searching by country codes. You see the 5 countries that I put. This is what you call the big 5, the big 5 countries that speak English. So moving on, now that you have those companies, you can build the proper list and export them to a CSV file, and we can move on over to Apollo. So phase 2 is finding qualified decision maker emails. So the next step is we must find the decision makers that we want to reach out to. So for this step, we'll use Apollo.io to enrich the company list that we have to help find the different decision makers' email addresses. So you could also use LinkedIn Sales Navigator for this. Again, I do have a separate video on my YouTube channel doing a complete screen share walkthrough of my process on LinkedIn. So it's a little bit more in depth, a little bit more interactive than this presentation today. But for the purposes of this video, I will be using Apollo.io. It is also a second really large database. LinkedIn is the biggest. Apollo is probably the second biggest. And people use Apollo because mainly for its ease of use. LinkedIn is a little bit intimidating, it's a little bit more expensive, but Apollo is cheaper, the UI is a little bit better, but there's certain caps on how much leads you can export and stuff like that, right? But jumping right into it, so once you download and import the CSV of the company list over to Apollo, you should see something like the following, a screen like the following, right? This is what it looks like as filming. It could change a little bit, but in the year that I have used Apollo, it hasn't really changed too much. It's looked pretty similar to this. So at this point, we can now qualify our list further, right? So you upload the list onto Apollo in companies. There's a section over here. If we look at the picture, we click companies, we click import over here. I probably should have circled this to make it a little easier, but you press import, you upload that CSV, and you should get all of these company names that we just scraped. The next thing we want to do is we qualify the list through the exclusion filters. So this is a very important part of the process, and it's very important that you do not skip this step, because most lists that you build with the company database, they usually come with a very good amount of unqualified companies. And the best way that I have found to counteract this is by excluding those companies with keywords. So we only get companies we want to work with. So to do this, you would just go over to the industry tab on the left. You go under company names, company keywords, and you put exclude keywords. It looks something like this. To find the keywords that we want to exclude, all you do is very, very simple, is you would just scroll through your list, and whatever companies that you notice are not a good fit, just look at the industry keywords and type it into the exclusion filters. So in our example, we are working with e-commerce brands, more specifically apparel companies, women apparel companies. So we obviously will be excluding words like marketing, sales, agencies, service, wholesale, medical, etc., because those are not at all what we are trying to target. So it really depends on who you're looking to target for the exclusion filters that you use. But if I'm targeting e-commerce brands, I'll use filters like this most of the time. So once you excluded the unqualified companies, you would just search and find people. You press the button find people, and you would just highlight them all. You press find people, and that's what this looks like. And after this, you will now see a list with all the people within all the companies that you have built within that list. So we now used to use something called the job title filter to find specific decision makers we want to be emailing. Because obviously, if we are selling ads services, we're not selling it to an intern. We're not selling it to a marketing specialist. We're not selling it to a marketing analyst. We're selling to the VP of marketing. If the company is smaller, we're selling to the founders. We're selling to the head of sales, head of marketing, people like that. So according to who you want to be targeting, you would choose the different management levels and the job roles that you want to be messaging. So these are just some of the ones that I typically choose when it's related to, let's say, marketing in this example, right? We would choose the owner, founder, C-suite, partner, VP, head, and director level positions. And more specifically, under the departments and job functions, we're choosing C-suite, we're choosing design, we're choosing human resources, and we're choosing marketing. So now that we have the list of decision makers using these filters, it's a little bit more qualified in terms of the companies we want to work with and the different decision makers. We see in this image, we have VP of marketings, we achieve marketing officers, senior talent partners, CEOs, and founders. So these are the type of people that we want to target for this very specific offer. So the last thing we need to do is export these lead lists to a list. What I personally do is I use findemail.com. Pretty much it's a tool that allows us to export this Apollo list and verifies the emails for us. It scrapes the list that Apollo gives us. So over here, right, we see a bunch of people. We see 988 people. Find Email helps us scrape all 988 people off of Apollo and verifies the email addresses. So back above, we talked about bounce rates. Verifying the email addresses helps to decrease the bounce rate of the people we're emailing. If you use another software, you will need to verify the emails with services like Million Verifier or neverbounce.com. Those are alternative websites to verify your email lead list. And once we do that, we have now verified our lead list of decision makers that are segmented according to the niche that we want to target. What we can do next is we can begin the script writing process. Now it's time to discuss the true money makers, and that is the cold email script writing. So this is by far where most people struggle, as it definitely requires the most skills, it requires the most dedication, and it requires the most amount of research to become really good at this. So what we'll do is we will break this script writing section into 3 different phases. So the first one is understanding your ICP. The second phase is creating a relevant offer. And the third phase is the cold email script frameworks. So pay attention here because this is by far the most valuable part of the video. So phase 1, understanding your ICP. So before we write our emails, we got to know who we're actually writing to and make it as specific as possible to that specific person. So if it's 2 CMOs of 25 plus employee headcount clothing brands, then we have to make it specific to that person. Is it for chiropractors with less than 5 employees? If so, we got to make it specific to chiropractors. Or is it to CEOs of 100 plus employee headcount IT companies? If so, then we have to be specific to those type of people as well. So depending on your customer profile, your copy will vary very heavily. You're going to write, if you think you're going to write the same email to a chiropractor as you would to a Fortune 500 CEO, you definitely would not, right? The same way that you wouldn't talk to your parents, the same way you would talk to your friends. There will be a slightly different way you go about doing that. You use different language, different tonalities, different things like that. Very specific wordings will be different. So what we need to do is write out the details for our customer profile. In order to do this, we must understand 4 things about our ICP. The first one is their niche and industry, so what they're in. Second one is their specific title and what that kind of means and their jobs with that title. The third one is the employee count, and the fourth one is the jargon that comes with that specific industry and that specific title. So the more specific and relevant we can be with each of these details within our copy is what's going to create higher conversion to meetings. So here's an example for CMOs of 25 plus employee clothing brands. So if the niche is clothing and apparel, the title is Chief Marketing Officers or the Head of Marketing. Employee count are companies with 25 plus employees. The general jargon is ROAS, CPAs, AOV, etc. So ROAS is return on ad spend, AOV is average order value, stuff like that, very specific to CMOs of clothing and apparel brands. So we'll keep this in mind while writing our copy to make it more relevant to our prospects. So with the understanding of the prospect's roles, the language, the company size, etc., we can now create a relevant and desirable offer that would be beneficial to the current situation. So let's dive a little bit into offer creation. So phase 2, which is creating a relevant offer. So if we want anyone to hop onto a sales call, onto a meeting with us, the first thing we must do is we must offer a solution that they actually want. And more than that is something they want and something that is relevant to the specific situation. So offering email marketing is simply not enough. How is email marketing alone going to help them? So what you need to do is you need to create a list of things that they're looking to do. What are priorities for someone like that? So let's say the chief marketing officer or head of marketing. These are some of their priorities. They might be looking to decrease ad spend. They might be looking to increase revenue from emails. They might be looking to increase customer retentions. They might be looking to increase average order values with unique flows. They might be looking to cut customer churn rates. So now that we have a list of what our offer actually does, we can now write an offer around each of these problems to create a solution. So for example, for the challenge, which is they want to increase customer retention, we could write something like, we'll increase customer retention by X% through unique Klaviyo flows. Or we could say for ad spend, decreasing ad spend, we could say, we will cut your ad spend while doubling your revenues in 90 days through email retention systems. Or we might even say, we'll add X% to your average order value within 3 months, or we'll pay you. So all of these things target a very specific challenge. They combat this, and it becomes really, really compelling towards the people that we're looking to email. So this is pretty basic examples, but I hope you get an idea. This is just part of what creates a valuable offer to prospects who run e-commerce brands. But what we need to do is we still need to make it a little bit more specific. So remember our ICP we'll use from the previous example in phase 1, for instance. So what we could say is we work with clothing brands to increase attributed email revenue by 30% in 60 days with our pure commission email system. So notice how this is much more tailored to the CMO of the clothing brand. So what we do is we mention the niche, we mention the specific email revenue as the priority since they are in charge of marketing, and mention the pure commission email system since most agencies, what they actually do is they charge monthly retainers, making our offer a little bit more risk averse. So with our offer in place, we can now move on to writing the actual email. So before writing our email, what we need to do is we need to use a framework to fit the pieces in so we don't just write a mess of an email. So every line in your email must have a purpose. We don't want any fluff. We want zero fluff. And here is a list of cold email frameworks that I've had the most success with. So the first framework is, and I'll break each of these down in much more specific detail, but the first one goes with intro, the offer, the case study, and then the CTA, call to action. The second framework is the intro, case studies, and value CTA, and I'll get into exactly what I mean by that. The third one is the intro, the pain point, and the solution CTA. Fourth point is the intro, the value CTA, and a PS line and a case study. Fifth framework is the email one would be a one-liner email, and the second email would be the offer and CTA. So you're breaking that into 2 emails. The sixth one is the intro, the CTA offer, and the case studies. And the last one is the intro, the question, plus the value CTA. So these are just a couple of the ones that you can use, but you can really mix and match each of these and different components of them as long as your email provides some sort of value and has a CTA. That's really the main components of it. Does it provide value? And what is your call to action? But really, there are 5 main pieces that can be used for every cold email. These are the 5 main pieces of good cold emails that will be used for our scripts. The first one is the intro. So who we are and how we found them, something relevant. Second one is the offer. So what exactly it is that we do. Third one is the pain point. So why should they pay attention? What are the challenges and what are the priorities? Fourth one is the case study. So who have we helped before to really prove that we could do what we say we're doing? And the fifth one is the call to action. So what's the next step? So I will break down each of these in details, starting with piece 1, which is the intro. So in piece 1, which is intro, the whole goal of the intro is to show that you have done the following 4 things. The first thing is show that you've done some research onto the prospect. The second one is you build a little bit of rapport. Number 3 is to explain why you've reached out to them specifically. And the fourth one is to show that you're not just another spammer. So a lot of people overcomplicate this, so let me explain. And remember, I just want you to keep in mind that a lot of people, they spend a lot of attention on personalized lines, AI written lines, stuff like that. This is probably the least important part of the email, right? You writing something personalized really doesn't add anything of value into the email. Pretty much all it does is just show you're not a spammer and you've done research, right? And I know in the beginning of my journey, when I was starting my agency and starting my outreach, I spent way too much time focusing on first lines. I actually paid someone several hundreds of dollars to write me first lines for I think like 200 leads, and they were so ass that I actually didn't end up using it at all. So I just basically threw money away, right? So typically, this is the intro where you show off your personalization. This can be done, again, with VAs manually writing lines, AI written lines, or generally personalized lines done through having segmented lists. For now, I'll just be covering generalized personalized lines. I could cover how to create AI personalized lines later with ChatGPT, not really with any other softwares. But let's just continue to use the example of the clothing brand CMO for our intro. So here's an example of something I'd write. Hey John, I loved your recent apparel ad, wanted to reach out. So notice how this can be said for most clothing brands, as they probably run ads of some sort. And if they don't, they're probably unqualified anyways, right? Because they just don't have money to spend an ad spend. So obviously, this is not optimal and should be way more specific and way more niche down. But for all the clothing brands in general, this can do the job, right? So what you could do is you could get really creative with your intro and just use a similar framework to this. So just use your brain, don't just straight copy. But this is a general framework of what you could be doing. So in piece 2, which is the offer, so we already covered what our offer should be, so what we're doing to help who, and what exactly our services and what the tangible result is. But how do we actually write an offer in our cold emails? So we want to mention 3 to 4 things here. The first one is the final result. Second thing is a time frame. Third one is unique mechanism. And fourth is possibly a guarantee. So just think of Hormozzi's offer equation. So it goes with, in terms of how value is created, it goes like dream outcome times perceived likelihood of achievement divided by time delay and effort and sacrifice. So back to the example we use for the CMO. So we could say we work with clothing brands to increase email revenue by 50% in 60 days with our peer commission email systems. We'll increase clothing sales by X% in 90 days through our unique flows, or we work for free. So something like this is very effective because we are telling them about what the dream outcome is. We're reducing the risk on their end because we're saying, we have a guarantee. We're basically saying we'll do this, and if it doesn't work, we'll work for free. So it shows a lot of value, right? So this prospect should be able to know the exact end result, how long it will take, how we'll do it, and what happens if we don't, all in one sentence. The prospect should not be confused about what we're offering as it's pretty much crystal clear, or else they will be turned off. And again, these are very basic examples. So I recommend you write out 10 different offer angles and go with the ones that are most unique. But the framework is still 100% valid. So moving on to piece 3, which is the pain point. So personally, I think calling out a very specific pain point is way more powerful than using just your offer in the cold email. Pain will always be way more motivating than desire because it's just basic human psychology. So just think about it. Who is more likely to run 100 miles? The first guy who has offered $10,000 to do it, or the second guy who will lose $10,000 if he doesn't run 100 miles, right? If we really think about it, we all know it's going to be the guy who loses the money, the guy who loses the $10,000 who'll be way more motivated to run 100 miles. So for this angle, it's good to write out a list of pain points using our ideal customer profile and how that we could solve it for them. So how do we mention a pain point in our emails? So first, we got to call out the pain. We'll do this by either asking a relevant question to provoke them, or we will mention a problem that we noticed. So then after that, we will offer a solution. So here's an example for the clothing CMO again. We could say something like, notice a few mistakes in your welcome flows that could be costing you X percentage conversions every single month. I made you a video covering how to fix these mistakes. Can I send it over to you? Question mark. So if the prospect resonates with this pain point, they're going to be interested. So what we could do is we could call out pain points and offer a solution for each of these problems. And then we got to show the prospect why we are credible in doing so and helping them solve these challenges and taking them to where they need to be. So we'll do this using case studies. So case studies can be the most powerful part of an email, and it usually is. So imagine you have a pain point. Let's say you're struggling with generating leads for your TikTok ads agency. If someone were to come to you and say, hey, we recently helped this TikTok ads agency that was struggling to find leads just like you go from 0 to 20 sales calls every single month within 45 days. What this does is it would be very relevant and very intriguing to you. You're basically telling the prospect that you've helped someone else who was in the exact same shoes achieve the exact same result that they are looking to achieve. Of course, they'll be interested, right? So the way we write out our case studies is very similar to how we write out our offer. And here's an example. We recently worked with Supreme, a clothing brand just like yours, 2x their email revenue in 67 days with our pure commission email system. So the reason this works is because there are two things that we want to always nail when mentioning a case study. The first one is relevance and the second one is social proof. So if you're targeting clothing brands, you always want to mention a clothing brand that you helped. You don't want to mention a food brand. You don't want to mention a pet brand. You want to mention the name of the company that you work with for additional social proof, and don't just say we helped a clothing brand. Piece 5 is the CTA. So you need a CTA in every email that you write. So the whole point of sending an email is to get a reply, then turn it in a meeting, right? So what we need to do is we need to give a prospect a clear reason to respond. There are 3 kinds of CTAs that we can use. The first one is a hard CTA. So that's directly asking for the call. So, hey, let's hop on a 15-minute call. The second is a soft CTA, which is mind if I send you more information. And the third one is a value CTA. So can I send you a video of XYZ? So out of these 3, the ones that have performed the best for me to date and probably will always be is the value CTA, right? I personally use the CTA for 90% of my personal email campaigns, the ones I use for my own agency, the ones that I use for my clients, because it's just providing value, right? It's in the name, right? Then the next one I use is the soft CTA here and there, but I almost never use the hard CTA. So pitching a call right off the first email, in my opinion, is a dead strategy because people are being spammed with hundreds of emails a day asking for their time. So how do we create a good CTA? So I always try to tie the CTA with either the prospect's desired outcome or their pain point. So here are some examples. Hey John, are you open to exploring how we can implement X system for company? Question mark. Another one might be, made you a video covering how to fix X, Y, and Z. May I send it over to you? So tying the CTA into the offer, tying it into the case study, and tying it into the pain point makes the email flows so much smoother. It makes the CTA much, much more valuable in general. So we've now covered every piece of the puzzle with our cold emails. It's now time to put all of the pieces together to craft some really fire cold emails. So by this point of the video, you should really know, number 1, who you're targeting, number 2, what your offer is, number 3, what your frameworks that you want to use, and number 4, how to write each piece of the framework. So all we have to do now is just implement what we've covered so far. So first, let's define who we're targeting. I'll use the exact same example. Niche, clothing and apparel. The title is CMO in charge of the marketing or someone in charge of the marketing department. Third one is employee count, so 25 plus with a revenue range around $100,000 per month. And the jargon is ROAS, CPAs, AOV, and etc. The second aspect is our offer. So we work with clothing brands to increase attributed email rev by 30% in 60 days with our pure commission email systems. After that, the third aspect is what frameworks are we trying to use? So I broke down the frameworks above, and this is the part where we choose it and we apply our offer and the niche into it. So if we use the first framework, which is the intro offer case study CTA, this is what that email looks like. You can pause it and read it. You can screenshot it. Hi X, love the vibe of company's website, and the close. Reaching out since we work with clothing brands to increase email revenues by 30% in 60 days with our pure commission email system. We use the system to help Supreme 2x email revenue in 67 days. Open to exploring this further. This is the second framework, the intro, the case study, the value CTA. For the purposes of time in this video, what you could do is you can pause these videos and you can read in more detail. So the second framework is intro, case study, and value CTA. Pause it, continue. Framework 3 is intro, pain point, and the solution CTA. So I'll write an example for each of these frameworks, right? So intro, pain point, solution CTA, right? So this is the third framework. So I just want to make this clear. These are just examples, right? Do not just copy these, because if you do, they won't work as well as if you come up with your own unique version of them. Makes sense, right? If you're just copying someone else's stuff, it just doesn't work as well. The whole point of this is to give you the tools, the frameworks, the resources, and the knowledge that you need to write great copy, and not just for you to just straight copy it. So now you should have a solid grasp on how to write good cold email scripts. The next aspect is the inbox management aspect. So inbox management is really where the meetings are really made, right? So having strong inbox management systems, having strong protocols in place to maximize meeting conversions is absolutely where the cold hard cash is made, right? Writing the scripts is where you convert the people. Inbox management is where you get actually people who are interested and turn their positive interest into book meetings where you can then sell them and make actual cash, right? So inbox management is every bit just as important as script writing. So setting up and launching campaigns is only half the battle. For building strong inbox management systems, you need to be able to maximize meeting conversions. So we'll be doing this by covering two aspects. The first one is the reply templates, and the second one is something called automated follow-up sequences. So jumping right into reply templates, there are 5 main reply scenarios that we run into with cold emails. The 5 ones that are most common are people saying, I'm interested, people saying, send more information, let's book a call, I'm the wrong person to reach out to Steve, and the 5th one is cost. And 90% of the time, these will be the responses that you get. So outside of replies saying not interested or the replies telling you to fuck off, these are the 5 most common ones. The other 10% of the time, you will have to give custom responses, but for the 5 most common reply scenarios, we can create essentially a copy and paste system of reply templates for each of these scenarios. So let's start with the reply template for I'm interested. So when people say I'm interested, you basically reply back to them. You say, hey John, thanks for your interest. For some more context, here is the sales asset. Here's the value if we're using a soft or value CTA. If you'd like to implement X for your company, are you available to chat at X, Y, or Z time zone? So it's okay to ask for meetings because the initial CTA was more of a soft CTA or value add. You can also book the call here with the calendar link. Let me know what works for you. So in this example above, I recommend always sending some sort of value to help push the prospects over the edge. This could be a case study. This could be examples of past or prior work. This could be sales letters, etc. But just don't pitch a meeting right off the bat without offering some form of value first. The next one is send more info. So pretty similar as well. You're basically saying, hey John, no problem. So essentially what we do is XYZ, where you break down your offer. For some additional context, here's the XYZ sales asset. If you'd be interested in learning more, are you available at 1, 2, or 3 time zone to discuss further? Are you available on Thursday or Friday at 12 p.m. noon EST to discuss further? Here's the calendar link. Let me know and we'll go from there. So in this example, notice how my tone in the email is a little bit more serious than the last one, right? So we do this because the prospect may not necessarily seem as interested. So we kind of need to reciprocate the same sort of energy back to them. We don't want to come off as super salesy, stuff like that. So that's how we do it. We want to give them more information. We want to give them some more value. And if they're still not interested, then no worries, right? It's not that big of a deal for us. And this shows that we are not desperate to book a meeting with them, which, if the call is converted, will also help us to create a better frame for our sales call. So the next reply is, let's book a call. This is pretty simple, pretty straightforward, right? Basically what we say is, hey John, sounds great. Are you available on Thursday or Friday at 12 p.m. noon? Also, feel free to book a time here as well. Calendly link. Looking forward to speaking with you. So this is obviously the best case scenario, right? So it's pretty simple, but you may have to run into a scenario or a situation where a prospect asks to book a meeting, but then they ghost you. And here's what you say to them in case they ghost when they initially ask for a meeting. So meeting request ghosted, it goes like this. Hey John, I placed a few minutes on Thursday or Friday for us to discuss about how we can set up these email flows. If you can't make it, no worries. Just wanted to get some time on the calendar as you said you're interested in chatting. Let me know if you'd be interested in rescheduling. Otherwise, we'll speak then. So as you can see from this email, I pretty much just booked them in. It's okay to do this since earlier in the email sequence, they explicitly said to have a chat, right? And in most cases, if they end up ghosting you, it's probably because they just forgot to, or they're cool with you just booking them in. So even if they reschedule, it's kind of still a win since they might not have to book a call at all. So don't be too afraid to do this because in most cases, you're really just doing them a favor since they're most likely just kind of too lazy to book in a call, right? So make sure you have Calendly workflows set up so that, you are notified so that they are notified when you've booked them in, right? So the next one is when they say, I'm the wrong person, please reach out to Steve. You can say, hey John, you could reach out to Steve and say, hey Steve, John told me to contact you regarding X, Y, and Z. Just a quick intro. This is what I do. This is who I am. And this is who I help. The previous email body, so the offer. And then this is the CTA. You may book a call here if you'd like to discuss further with the Calendly link. So going out of your way to contact these referral touchpoints typically has a high reply rate because you're saying something really relevant. You're basically saying, hey, your CEO John told me to reach out to you. And the meeting conversion rate usually has a much higher meeting conversion rate than a regular cold touch point since they are generally a little bit warmer. And it's definitely recommend doing it like this. And finally, the last and most common email reply that we get is related to cost. People asking us, awesome, how much does this cost? What's the pricing? The way we tackle this is by saying, hey John, the pricing varies, but typically it is X, Y, and Z. We can't give you a specific number since it depends on 1, 2, and 3 scope of work. What we could do is we could speak for 7 to 9 minutes about this briefly if you're not opposed to it. If you're open to it, I'll send you over an invite. If not, no worries. So this email alone will convert meetings like crazy because it's basically objection handling and has converted some of the toughest objections with this exact cold email sequence, right? So for example, in this example, he's asking about price. We use this exact framework and we ended up booking in a call, right? Next one, exact same thing, right? It's just people saying the exact same stuff, right? So now that you have the frameworks on the reply templates, all you have to do is simply fill out each of this section with the correct information that is relevant to your offer. And now you've got working reply templates. You don't have to type any more emails out, any of that stuff. So to make life even easier, what you could do is add these templates over into the master inbox into the Unibox section of smartly.ai, and we'll be able to reply back to emails in seconds without you needing to go copy everything and paste it in. So now you or your inbox manager are now fully equipped to reply back to emails in literal seconds if you wanted to, right? So what we could do now is we could reply back to prospect with ease, but what about follow-ups, right? This is where something called the automated subsequences come into play. So what are subsequences? So subsequences are automated follow-up sequences that are used for different reply scenarios. So these are very useful since they really can help us convert meetings on autopilot and really help us to get rid of the worry of leads going to waste because we're reaching out to them, they don't reply, and we have to manually reply back. So back when I was manually sending emails over Gmail and hiring a virtual assistant to help me to do so, it was kind of a lot of work to reply back to people because now we would have to build out kind of like our own really rundown version of a CRM inside of Gmail where we do this using labels, stuff like that, and then we will have to go back, follow up with people. But now the softwares like SmartLead makes it extremely easy for us to follow up with people who have shown interest initially. So there are really four main subsequences that we'll use for the follow-ups. The first one is the interested sequence. The second one is the meeting request sequence. The third one is the out of office sequence. And the fourth one is the pre-call sequence. And each of these could be automated within SmartLead in the subsequence section and on Calendly. So let's cover the interested subsequence. So it's over here in the sequence, and inside Calendly, we have a bunch of these follow-up reminders as well, mainly for people to booking calls. So a general rule of thumb for prospects who respond to us who have shown some form of interest is to follow up until they either tell us yes, they're interested, or they tell us to fuck off, right? So this means that there really isn't a limit to how many emails that we're able to send to our interested subsequence. So I'll really just lay out a few examples for you here. So under the interested subsequence category, these are kind of the follow-ups. So 2 days later, we'll just say, hey John, let me know your thoughts on the previous email. 4 days later, the second follow-up is, hey John, circling back with a case study, would love to give you more insight on the X strategy we've used to generate this thing for these companies that we've worked with. You can book a call here if you'd like to learn more. 7 days later, follow-up 3. Hey John, about a week ago, you said you're interested in this strategy. Has that changed? ? We can dive much deeper over a call if that interests you. If not, no worries. Let me know and I'll send over a calendar invite. So these are pretty simple and pretty effective. The goal with these subsequences is to keep circling back with sales assets and pitch times for a meeting relentlessly. The goal is to simply get a response or to get a fuck off. People who tell us to F off is really better than no response at all, because now we know they're just not interested. And the next step is to cover a meeting request sequence. So the meeting request subsequence, the follow-ups kind of look like this. 2 days later, you're saying, let me know if these times work for you, or you can also send me a few times that work well for you if you'd like to. Here's my Calendly link again if you want to book a call if it's easier. The second follow-up 4 days later is, hey John, circling back with a case study for you before our call. We will dive deeper into X, Y, and Z strategy that we've used to generate Y for the Z companies that we work with. Would X or Y time work better for you? The third follow-up 7 days later is, hey John, last week you said you were interested in speaking further on X. Has that changed? We'll dive much further over a call. If that still interests you, send over some times that work best for you if you're still interested. So now the meeting request subsequence, if you've noticed, is very similar to the interested subsequence. The only thing that's really changed is the intent, since the prospect has stated that they're interested in a meeting. Again, we just want to hit them with a little bit more value, and we want to hit them with a meeting as our CTA. Now for the out of office subsequence, really all you need to do is essentially copy and paste your main cold email campaign and just add a 14 to 21 day delay on the leads receiving the new emails. This is how you do it. Basically, the people saying, we're out of office, I'm at the cottage until October 10th, I'm out traveling with my family until next month, stuff like that. That is the out of office subsequence. So from there, all you have to do is just change the initial one-liner, the intro line from the first email, the sequence. You could change it from something to, hey John, saw that you were finally back in office, tried reaching a few weeks ago. This adds a layer of personalization that most people don't do. So this is kind of what that looks like, right? So since you'll be sending emails from your out of office sequence at a lower volume than your typical cold email sequence, you could even add some links. You can add pictures, since deliverability will probably not be as affected by the low volume. So what you can also do is you can also test out a hard CTA as well with the sequence. And finally, the last main subsequence that we'll use is something called the pre-call subsequence. So what this is a sequence that will not only increase your meeting show rates, but it could also make the prospects easier to close. So to set this up, all you need to do is set up a Calendly subscription, so the software that we'll be using to book meetings on a calendar, and you need to get access to the workflow feature. So here's what that setup looks like. Email 1 is the confirmation email with a VSL, a sales letter, or a case study. Email 2 is a reminder 2 days prior. Email 3 is a reminder 24 hours prior with more sales assets. Email 4 is a reminder 2 hours prior with a rescheduling link. And you can also add some text messages with each of these emails. You get really creative with it with this pre-call subsequence. And the goal is to both warm up your prospects before the call and to make sure that they show or reschedule if they need to. And there you have it, right? These are the 4 These are the main 4 subsequences you need for converting more leads into meetings. That's kind of the wrap for the outbound section. If you follow everything I stated so far up until this point, I guarantee that you will book at least 5 to 20 meetings per month, even if you have 0 past experiences, right? Just follow everything I tell you. This is everything that you need to know, A to Z. In terms of inbox management, I wish there was a video or a resource like this when I was first getting started. Unfortunately, there was not. So what I had to do was I had to buy a lot of courses, a lot of different programs, do a lot of Google searches, watch a ton of different YouTube videos from a bunch of different people, and really just test a bunch of stuff until I found that my answer, which is everything that I put together here. So use this resource, use it for yourself, test it,